Hello and welcome to the PoliticsJOE Pubcast, a slightly more sombre edition of the PoliticsJOE Pubcast. I'm joined by Ed Campbell, the golden boy of PoliticsJOE. Ed, how are you?
I'm doing well, how are you?
Good, thank you, mate. Good.
Excellent.
And Ava Santina, capital J journalist. How are you?
Great, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming into work. We are...
The close call today.
For once.
What have you guys been up to? Decent weekend?
Yes, it was a nice weekend. Had a friend's birthday drinks and had a roast yesterday. First roast in a few months.
I'm looking forward to my first roast of the season.
It was a good
Oh, you haven't had one yet?
No.
It's a good day.
I've had a few rogue ones where I go back to see my family and we'll be like, oh, let's go for a roast on the Sunday. And they've all matched up with the 30-degree days.
You can't have
Yeah.
a roast.
So
no roast beef then.
often sat in a pub beer garden, baking in the sun, eating a quarter
the
of a
worst
chicken.
meal.
Yeah, it's not great. Roast potatoes, sort of increasing my internal body temp. No. Looking forward though. Looking forward to my first roast. What did you go for?
It was a roast chicken. My friend made it. He's a very good cook. He's also a food critic, so he kind of have to be.
Yeah.
It was roast chicken with
It's my ex-boyfriend.
We were just having lunch.
yeah, so that's how we met. Roast chicken with everything.
Top 5 roast components. If you can only have 5 bits on the plate, including gravy, what are they?
The meat.
Which one?
I'd go for lamb over any of them.
I thought you would have been a half a chicken guy.
I think I eat a lot of chicken anyway.
Right.
So I
Gains.
don't see because I'm huge. But I don't see chicken as like a special occasion meat. If that makes sense. If you want more of my thoughts about what meats qualify for special occasions, just DM me and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
So lamb,
yeah.
lamb, Yorkshire puddings, roast potatoes,
See, we're getting dangerously close already.
gravy, and then you have to have a veg. I'd say broccoli.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Or take out roast potatoes and have potato croquettes.
What?
No.
Yeah, special treat.
Why?
Because they're tastier.
With gravy on them?
Yeah, they're good.
That's really weird.
Is it a croquette with, let's say, some jamon or something
No
else on the
jamon.
inside? On the inside?
No, man, just patata. Just patata, no bravas.
Any place for a little bit of cauliflower cheese in there?
Well, not in my top 5. I think I'd sooner just have straight broccoli than cauliflower cheese. It's a bit stodgy a lot of the time. I think it's quite easy to do a bad cauliflower cheese.
Yeah, I'd hear that.
What about you guys? What are your special occasion meats?
Pork belly,
Yeah, that's a goodie.
because you get the crackling there as well, which, if we were to, does that count as one of the top 5? I would argue that it's just part of the one with the pork, because it's the skin of the meat. So yeah, pork belly for me, and you're veggie, so what is it? Just joyless nut roast?
No, I don't normally. I just normally do bits. I'm more of all of the trimmings rather than like an actual nut. I hate the nut roast.
Because I suppose without the main event, you can just go full send on all the associated parts. Yeah.
So that's why you want your cauliflower cheeses, your stuffing balls, your parsnips, your roasted carrots, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like a honey roast carrot.
Yeah.
I'm not a parsnip man, personally.
Do you know, I would have thought that.
Yeah.
If someone said to me, what veg
You give off
does
that
Ed
vibe. not
like? I would have gone for a parsnip.
Anyone, ask anyone. they will say the same thing.
Right, should we talk about the news then?
Sure.
Yeah, we put it off for long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all the whimsy you're getting with this episode.
So there's, the story, right? The news story of the weekend about Russell Brand. Accusations in the Sunday Times and Channel 4 investigation dispatches in partnership. Accusations about rape and sexual assault. Accusations which he strongly denies. But 4 women have accused him of rape and sexual assaults between 2006 and 2013 while he was a presenter for BBC Radio 2 and Channel 4's Big Brother spin-off. And again, he denies those accusations. One woman says that Brand raped her against a wall in his LA home. She was treated at a rape crisis centre on the same day. The Times says it has seen medical records to support this. A second woman alleges that Brand assaulted her when he was in his early 30s and she was 16 and still at school. She alleges he referred to her as, quote, the child during an emotionally abusive and controlling relationship. A third woman claims that Brand sexually assaulted her while she worked with him in LA and that he threatened to take legal action if she told anyone else about her allegation. The fourth woman alleged being sexually assaulted by Brand and him being physically and emotionally abusive towards her. The investigation also included claims about his behaviour towards women and his workplace conduct over the same period. The BBC, Channel 4 and a production company, the one that made Big Brother and its spin-offs, have said they are investigating after the allegations came out. Since publication, The Times says it has been contacted by several women with more claims about Brand, but said their allegations have not yet been investigated and will now be rigorously checked. The journalists working on those Times and Sunday Times investigative stories were Rosamund Irwin, Charlotte Wace, and Paul Morgan Bentley. Ava, a big story about, well, gender politics, about workplace relations, and, well, yeah, I guess the alleged completely inappropriate and disgusting behaviour of a powerful man. Your initial reaction when this story surfaced?
My first reaction was this must be linked to some kind of global conspiracy theory trying to take down powerful men.
Of course. Yeah.
So I obviously thought of your Joe Rogans, your Tucker Carlsons, and I thought to myself, what do they all have in common? The COVID vaccine.
Okay. Naturally, that's what you thought. Ed, did you think the same?
Believe it or not, I did. Eve
And I didn't because I'm a shill.
Oh, Eve and I were at the same flat Earth conspiracy. Excuse me, conference. It's not conspiracy.
No,
COVID's
conference.
the real conspiracy.
Yeah.
And everyone there was saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were glad that Russell came out ahead of the allegations.
Yeah.
He did, didn't he? There was an interesting bit I heard. I think it was in the ST story, and maybe I heard Rosamund Irwin talking about it in broadcast, that they reached out, right of reply. He instructed lawyers. The lawyers asked for more time. They gave it, and then stopped replying to their requests for comment.
Mm-hmm.
And then his video came out.
Yeah. There was a brief moment there on Twitter when the video had come out where you did think to yourself, my God, imagine if it's not about him. And he's just... Just to let you know.
I've been accused of these horrendous things.
There's a bigger conspiracy around it, like in the vortex, the lizard vortex, which is that when he left, I guess, polite society and went onto YouTube to talk about his conspiracy theories, that he did all that to kind of build a following behind him. So as when these allegations were to surface, he could go, well, I told you they were going to do something mad like this. I told you they were going to try and bring me down. This is just because of the Moderna vaccine, you know?
I think there's if you look at sort of how culture has changed in the last 20 years, and actually this is a slightly protracted point, so you have to forgive me for talking for a little bit, but one of the really striking things in the Dispatches program for me was the clip of him doing stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's talking about like getting a blowjob and making a woman's mascara run. And obviously it's incredibly sinister in context of some of the allegations, because one of them does pertain to a sexual assault relating to oral sex.
And mascara running.
Yeah, which was really grim. The sort of side takeaway for me was that there's an audience of, I'd say, like a couple of thousand people laughing at that material. And I thought it was really striking just how far I think public attitudes have shifted away from that in recent times, because you think about that sort of mid-noughties, that you are prime lad culture, right? You are things like that being enormously popular, as well as, you know, Little Britain is probably a pretty good example. Similarly,
Mighty Boosh,
Buzzcocks, you know, incredibly provocative. It was like the sort of fat families.
Yep.
You know, particularly in TV, actually, of like sort of trying to find the line, of which Channel 4 was actually really at the vanguard of, and pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable and what was tasteful, and that sort of thing. You then Me Too happens, right? And there's allegedly this broad reckoning about gender relations and the abuse of power by men. You have, in that time, you have Weinstein who gets done. The Savile allegations come out. Not to say that there's necessarily a parallel between those two men and Russell Brand. And in the intervening period, what has Russell Brand been doing since he left mainstream channels. I always think it's funny. Again, this is a side note that people say, "Oh, I'm not in the mainstream media," when they publish on YouTube, which is the world's largest search engine and is owned by one
6 million subs on YouTube.
Yeah, one of the most powerful companies in the world, and suggest that that's not mainstream as if you're like some kind of like alternative, countercultural thinker. But anyway, this reckoning happens, right? Me Too happens, and he has an incentive, I think, to, if these allegations turn out to be true, to create this legion of fans who don't trust the media. Because that's a key part of his messaging on there, right? Is about mainstream media, about the creation of narratives and how people are telling you lies, whether it's in relation to ivermectin and coronavirus, whether it's in literally any of the stuff he talks about. It's one of his favorite shticks to talk about. He has this kind of like messianic quality to him. One of the really interesting things in the Sunday Times piece was about his festival, where he kind of walked through the crowd in like a kimono and everyone was touching him and he was going like, "You are now free, carriers, you are carriers of the revolution." If the allegations are true, he obviously has an incentive to create this legion of fans who don't trust the mainstream media that are reporting the allegations, because then they go, in the same way Tate's fans go, "Oh, it's the Matrix. The Matrix are attacking him." They then doubt the veracity and how trustworthy the information is that's coming out of the mainstream outlets that are reporting this.
Do you remember The Truss, which was his show?
I never actually watched it, but I'm aware of it.
I think I only watched the Ed Miliband one, which was on the eve of the 2015 election. But the tagline for that was, "It's like the news if the news was true." That's why it's called The Truss. So since pre-2015, he's been creating a narrative that mainstream journalism isn't accurate, which he can now pull in his favor. If all your fans believe that, and you've been outed by the mainstream media.
Yeah.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because I think there is merit in not just getting your news from terrestrial channels or from, I don't know, any kind of title that is out there. I think there's like,
papers.
I think just kind of having a little bit, looking around and reading other bits is helpful. But that bizarre disregard for, even the Times story itself or the BBC, it's just so galaxy brain, I can't even put it into words. I was trying to think about it over the weekend. What I don't understand is there's this sort of marked distrust in the BBC and other organisations that you can't get the truth from them or whatever. And then you've got an institution like the Met, which has hosted people like Wayne Couzens, and typically under 3% of rapes lead to conviction, right? It's got a proven track record of not dealing with sexual assault well. How do those two schools of thought go together and think, well, then a woman would obviously go to the Met to report a rape if it actually did happen, but in the same vein, you wouldn't go to the BBC to talk about your pro-Brexit train of thought because you don't believe that they would deal with it in the way that you'd want. Do you see what I'm saying about that parallel?
Yeah, it's actually one of the. I guess we're talking about sort of the reaction to this, right? The unbelievable, like, the legions of people who've turned out to defend him in the face of these accusations, right? It kind of baffles the mind, and one of their primary lines of attack is why didn't they go to the police? Why isn't this a criminal investigation? Why is it only coming out now? Why is this happening in the media? And you're absolutely right to highlight the fact that I think probably the vast majority of women actually don't feel particularly comfortable coming forward to the police with allegations like this. I don't think they don't feel like they're going to be treated seriously. As you've mentioned, there have been multiple recent high-profile instances of rapists literally working within the Metropolitan Police and only being caught after a litany of crimes. And you mentioned the charge rate for rapes is less than 2%. So what are we saying? Are we saying that 98% of women in those instances are lying and their claims are baseless, or are we saying that actually the Met is not an institution, or any other police force for that matter, is an institution which is capable of taking sexual assault and sexual crime seriously? I don't think it's wrong of a woman to not want to go through that process. It's hard enough to do what they've done already,
Well, if you're going to go and report a rape, let's just go through the stages of that. So you turn up, you have to give over your underwear. Sorry, I'm going to take it here, but you have to give over your underwear. the rape kits that are used to assess you sometimes are kept in fridges that don't work, or they're left open and therefore they're contaminated. You have to give a statement 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times. You have to give over your phone. Now, something really traumatic has happened to you. The first thing that is going you want to have is your phone. You might want to call your family or talk to your friends. You're going to have that agency taken away from you, and all of your text messages from the past 2 to 10 years are going to be read through by some bloke called Steve, who might not have been particularly nice to you when you turned up at the station. And if you've ever shown an interest in, say, rough sex, or you've actually shown an interest in having a sexual partner, that evidence is going to be used as evidence against you in a courtroom read out to a couple of hundred people, where a jury will decide that, no, she liked choking once, therefore she was consenting to this sexual act.
I think someone made the point, I wish I could remember who it was, because I think it's a good point, is someone, say you were one of these women, it's like, why now? People are asking, why now? Why are these people coming out now? And someone made the point that going forward of your own agency to report something about a powerful man, a powerful, famous, rich man, who, and it's unlikely to be treated seriously for the reasons we've already discussed, but if you're approached and said, I'm a journalist working on this investigation, I've already spoken to X number of people who are willing to go on the record, would you like to add your testimony to that? That's probably a much more appealing proposition than reporting it to the police. It's easier to get people to go on board with that investigation rather than the police investigation as well.
It's also arguably you've got to supply a lot more evidence to a newspaper that's going to run a sexual assault allegation than you do to a police officer. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but especially one against a man who is particularly litigious, you're going to have to go overboard with what you're supplying, right?
Yeah, it really, I thought it was one of the most sort of undignified responses to it, particularly from people who are kind of within the media, casting doubt on allegations like that. Is they've been working on this story for 4 years, and the heavy lifting and the research and the fact finding and the investigation. Actually, there's very few institutions or things that are capable of doing that beyond, established. It's the irony, right, of Brand traducing mainstream media is that things like Channel 4, Dispatches on Channel 4, and things like the Sunday Times are actually some of the only organisations that are capable of conducting this kind of research and investing the resources into it. It's not cheap what they've done, and a lengthy process. And actually, your point that it's probably easier for those women to talk to a reporter than it is to talk to the police force, but it's still not an easy thing to do.
No.
And that's probably why it's taken as long as it has. And
they've got to go on record. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to actually put your face and name to it. I think that one of the most upsetting things that we were looking back on with the Russell Brand thing over the weekend was on his BBC Radio 2 show. He had this newsreader that he always used to say things like, I'd like to get under the table. And, he used to just sort of jibe at her. And it was very, that kind of lad culture of the time. And she actually made complaints. And then he would joke on air about the complaints she'd made. I mean, what do you want from these women? If you're going to, everything is a laugh and a joke in that era. I think also the issue is freelancing in media spaces, because a lot of the time, even if you're working at BBC or working at any radio station, it's probably like maybe a 70-30 split of employed versus freelance contracts. If you are a freelancer fresh out of university, you don't have a direct line of contact. You don't have like an HR person that you can go and report things to. And if you are to go and report something, sometimes your boss is the one who is harassing you, and what you're going to go to them and be like, I'd like to make a complaint about the way that you've touched me. What are you going to do? I think that structure, you need to have like a kind of almost like an ombudsman or, an HR that's outsourced that you can go to and make a complaint. Because if you're in the project and you're an editor that's trying to keep talent happy, you're going to get rid of the freelancer rather than actually tackle what might be going on with the talent.
I think having that's a really important distinction, which I'll pick up on in a second. I think the third party idea isn't actually necessarily a bad one, because speaking anecdotally from people I know, 9 times out of 10, if you're a junior member of staff at an organisation, the HR department's job is not to facilitate correct working practices. It's not to maintain that codes of conduct are maintained. The HR department's job is to contain the potential fallout and spill, particularly if you're making an accusation against someone who's more senior than you in a company, either keeping it quiet, either via an NDA, or reporting back to senior managers about what is happening. 9 times out of 10, because the HR department is within the company, who are they responsible? Who do they answer to? It's the senior management team of the company. I imagine the head of HR is probably within that management team, and their job is to protect the senior members of staff. They're always going to protect those people, particularly over junior members of staff. And that point about the talent is a really, really interesting one, because there is a dynamic, isn't there? There's a separation within media, whether that's at a BBC radio newsroom or whether it's at a TV production, like, he presented the thing that went on to become Big Brother's Little Brother, didn't he? It was
Forum.
Yeah. The talent is separate to the other staff. They're not treated the same, even though technically you're all working on the same thing together, right? But as talent, you're different to the people behind the camera operators. You're different to the producers. You are different to the editor, and you're certainly different to the runners. It's almost like a degree of reverence. It's we can't upset Russell because otherwise, he won't be on form for the broadcast, and he won't have the same pattern. And everyone's, is his rider here? Have we made sure we've got
you're
the
allowed to behave in a way that's completely inappropriate for anyone else of that team to behave.
Yeah, for anyone to behave in a workplace.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking specifically about the accusations that he's faced, which he denies. I'm talking about just generally within media, right? The attitude, the power dynamic there is completely asymmetrical, to be honest with you. And I think there has to be a degree of introspection within the British media about how, if you're going to allow one aspect of it, because technically everyone who works on a production like that, you're all members of staff, you're all working on the same thing, right? And yeah, okay, some of you might have higher salaries than others, but that doesn't mean that you're entitled to behave in a way that's different to other people.
They do, though.
Huh?
They do, though.
Yeah.
I mean, who among us can say we haven't been screamed at in a way that is just completely inappropriate?
Yeah.
Completely. And if it was in any other workplace, it would be an egregious breach of contract.
I remember talking to a friend who works as a producer at a nameless organisation, was moved on to a new show to work with a notoriously difficult host, talent. And they said that they, on the first edit, they sort of had this like screaming row with the talent. It was podcast going out after broadcast or something. And they said that they wanted to do that because they wanted to establish from the outset that it was sort of like, this is what I'm responsible for. You as the presenter are not responsible for deciding what happens in the edit. I am responsible for that. And they felt that if they didn't do that immediately, and it still was like an incredibly dysfunctional thing, right? They're having a screaming match with someone, and actually quite a risky thing to do, having a screaming match with someone who's far more senior than you. That if they hadn't have done that, then essentially the working relationship would have just been horrific for them, because they would have, from the outset, already established, that they were a junior partner in the relationship, and they were going to be bossed around and potentially, abused is the wrong word, but I can't think of what the right one is in a working context.
I think it is abused.
Yeah.
But on the 16-year-old thing.
Yeah, that's about power dynamics as well, isn't it?
I just think that was I was going to say fascinating, because I don't really know how to describe it. The discussion that was going on over the weekend, which was like, well, it's not illegal to have sex with a 16-year-old. I cannot think of any man in my life, my age, who would want to have sex with a 16-year-old. Yeah. And I wouldn't associate with them if they did. What I don't understand is that kind of gap in the law, which is that if you are, say, someone's teacher, you can't have sex with a 16-year-old, right? Because you're in a position of influence and power over them. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why that doesn't, or actually I think it should be broadened out to include high-profile media personalities, someone who can be indirectly influential over you. I mean, controversially, I think the age of consent should be raised. I think if you're over 18, I don't think you should be allowed to have sex with a 16-year-old. Or maybe if you're over 25, you should be allowed to have sex with a 16-year-old. I don't think that, I don't think a woman's brain is formed properly at that age. And I don't think that they can have the majority of girls, not women, girls that age. I don't think that they can fully consent to a 40-year-old man and have sex with them.
I think it's certainly it's a biological fact, right, that our bodies carry on developing up until I think at least 21, maybe even 25. Certainly some cognitive aspects. I struggle to accept personally, actually, that means that we have to wait until that age before people can consent to do certain things. We were talking about this before we started broadcasting with Laura, and she made a really good point, because I was thinking that if you're old enough to pay taxes, i.e. at 16, you should be old enough to vote. I actually think that's relatively uncontroversial. But why do we have this gap between what you can do at 16, what you can do at 18? You can consent to sex, but you can't buy alcohol, for example. When you're 16 years old. And the point that I hadn't particularly given very much thought to is that actually maybe it's a little bit reductive and simplistic to say, well, once you're 16, you should be able to do all of those things, because actually, just because you're old enough to consent or decide about one thing doesn't mean you're necessarily ready to consent or decide about something else as you get older. And actually having that disparity between those things is actually probably a reflection of a slightly more nuanced perception of maturity and development, and when you become a legal adult. Previously, my view was broadly once you're 16, it should not in the context of a sexual relationship be a free-for-all. Like, you're 16, you should be able to vote, pay tax, have sex, buy alcohol. But actually, as I get maybe it's because I'm getting older that I no longer think
further
that's the
away
case.
from that.
Famously now further away from 16 than I was back then. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the answer is. Maybe it's you can consent to sex at 16 with someone up to the age of 21.
Yeah, I would say 25 or something.
Because I think
where's the cutoff though?
Yeah, it's so arbitrary, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is arbitrary, actually, because I don't think the law is to inhibit the 16-year-old. I think the law should be there to say to a 40-year-old man, like, mate, like, don't have sex. Mate. Don't,
Mate.
No, but yeah, having sex with a 16-year-old at your big age is a really strange thing to do, and you're going to have untold influence and power over this person.
I think that's the case though for any age between 18 and 25 though.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're wrong there.
A 24-year-old having sex with a 16-year-old, that's weird. That's a weird thing to do. 21-year-old, well, that's weird.
Is there a difference between what we find tasteful or acceptable and what should be legal?
I look at particularly my sister, I look at her, and she's a lot younger than me, and I'm still like, God, you're a child. Why would okay, she's the age now that I was when I started dating a man who was much older. And I look back on that, and even none of that was illegal and all of that was above board. But I used to turn up at events, and say I was a student to his friends, or actually I used to go to media events with him. And people were like, oh, you're a student. What are you studying? Looking back on that, what on earth how embarrassing is that situation? You were with a 21-year-old student, taking them, and you at your big age. It's a bizarre dynamic that I just don't think is palatable anymore.
Because what I was going to say was what you're saying there about, like, what self-respecting 40-year-old man, dates a 16-year-old. And I guess that what I was going to say was, I would have absolutely no time for someone that was doing that, right? And I think that's a key distinction, because you're totally entitled to say you should be fucking embarrassed by that, mate. What are you doing? Like, you're a grown-ass man. Fucking get yourself together. But it's a step much further to say that's criminal.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It should be the social embarrassment of saying your girlfriend can't come because she's in detention. Should be enough.
She can't have a drink because she's 17.
Because she's got hockey in the morning.
Yeah. I just think that 17-year-old, I just think they're children.
Yeah, they are. I think it's also, there's, when you are that age though, you're like, I'm not a child. It's like the weird, is it someone between the ages of 16 and 18 is legally a child, but you don't feel like a child, you don't look like a child as much as you used to. there's like an interesting gap between like the late teenagehood, I suppose, and like because also when you're that age, you're like I am an adult.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I don't know if you've mistakenly found yourself in a pub or like a club that happens to be on a student night, and you're like, why are all these children in here?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not. It's
Oh
not.
no, these people are actually 21 years old.
Yeah.
And you realise that at the time when you thought you were Billy Big Bollocks, you actually look like
And
you were
then there
just.
are some people walking into those student nights going, "Oh, who shall I take home?"
Oh,
See, when you put it like that, it's disgusting.
grim.
Yeah, no, for sure.
God, imagine like a 40-year-old man going back to student digs to like.
What do we make of then? Seeing as we're talking about kind of social ostracization and the social reaction to, let's say, the theoretical case we were just talking about, a lot of people saying it's been another common refrain that about the presumption of innocence, about how we're innocent until we're proven guilty, and until Russell Brand answers a charge or defends himself in court, he has the presumption of innocence held up against him. And that what's happening right now is just a trial by media.
Well, I suppose you're teeing up the point that the state presumes you innocent until you're proven guilty. And actually, we, the public, are allowed to think whatever we like. Because free thought and, all of that lovely stuff that the right wingers enjoy so much means that I can actually presume someone guilty if I'd like to. For example, I regularly presume Jimmy Savile to have been guilty, even though he was not found guilty in a criminal court. But that would be a really good debate to have. Maybe we should invite on people defending Russell Brand and go, make your case for Savile.
Oh my god.
Maybe we should get a medium on and we can interview Jimmy Savile.
We wouldn't have to stop there. There's a ton of people we could interview. If we get an actual medium.
If we had access to
What
the
podcast
afterlife.
that would be?
Diana.
Hitler.
Whoa.
It'd be interesting.
You say whoa, but I think that is probably, if you surveyed the British people about who they could communicate with. Actually, it's probably slightly different now that the Queen has died, but
Yeah.
I think honestly it would be like Savile, Diana, Hitler. You're probably. I think those three characters loom fairly large in the British
Nightmare blunt
consciousness.
rotation.
If you could ask Diana one question, what would it be? Mine would be, would you cull all the XL bullies?
I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you.
Should Camilla be queen? It'd be interesting to hear her take.
Didn't she have some kind of super prescient interview where she talked about some kind of conspiracy or something? Have I made that up?
I don't know.
Was it in the Bashir interview?
There's 3 of us in this marriage, is the only thing I can think from that.
Mm.
Maybe you on the TikToks.
Yeah,
You're down the Diana TikToks.
I'm absolutely not down the Diana TikTok rabbit hole.
That would be so chic if you were. Came in with some mad conspiracies.
Well, he's got a parallel career. And there's just no crossover in audience between PoliticsJOE and the conspiracy stuff. So
No one knows
no
that
one
they
knows.
exist.
Isn't it suspicious that Diana died the same year that Windows 97 came out?
That's a great Ollie impression.
It sounds very similar to your Keir Starmer impression.
Bill Gates, Paris Death Trap.
Seeing as we're talking about Jimmy Savile and Russell Brand, shall we play the clip of them talking to each other?
Yep.
Yeah?
It'd be very nice to meet you one day, Mr. Jimmy Savile, just, you know.
If you've got a sister, you could meet me by bringing her along.
I mean, I haven't got any sisters,
I
but
don't usually meet fellas, but if you've got a sister, that's okay.
I've got a assistant called... Part of her job description is that anyone I demand she greets, meets, massages, she has to do it. She's very attractive, Jimmy.
Well, that's a good start.
What kind
Good
of...
start. You could send her along to do some research.
Would you like her to wear anything in particular, Sir Jimmy?
I'd actually prefer her to wear nothing.
Right, so you want my assistant to meet you naked? Okay, well that's not going to be a problem.
That's pretty disgusting, isn't it?
Really gross. I think actually both of them speaking together, it does. The Russell Brand allegations were an open secret in the comedy industry. I heard a comedian do stand up about it 5 years ago, and he said there's people talk about this as an open secret, so that means it's not a secret. These are the allegations, and so it's been widely discussed within comedy for however long. And I think it was similar for Jimmy Savile's career, the allegations that he made over his career. So it is the case, like, I think that's what people are finding uncomfortable, is that it's like the point about the journalistic aspect of this thing is these things can only go public after years and years of thorough investigating and standing up your evidence, etc. But there's nothing stopping you telling your friend that guy's wrong and stay away from him.
Yeah, and I actually have a problem with a lot of the time people, again, maybe I'm just completely Twitter brained because most of my talking points in this podcast have been about like what the people defending him have to say for themselves. But it's taken so long for the allegations to come out. What do you mean it's an open secret, etc.? And it's kind of like, well, an open secret can mean that young women who have experienced sexual assault or rape feel like coming forward is going to be to their own detriment, whether it's in terms of their career progression, whether it's in terms of how they're seen by their colleagues or peers, whether it can mean any host of things. And that something being an open secret is perhaps a path of least resistance in terms of a defense mechanism for, let's say, the women working in that industry. Mm. Parliament is probably a pretty good example, right? Where people give each other a nudge and say, don't go and meet that person by yourself.
Don't get in a lift with that person.
Yeah, because it's very different, and it's actually much harder, as we've discussed, to prove that something has happened. Mm-hmm. And also, actually, a lot of the people involved don't particularly want to go through the process that requires that to happen. And so it's simpler and safer for them to instead just watch out for other people and issue warnings rather than trying to get a front page on the Sunday Times or trying to get a criminal conviction via the police.
I think it's the shame aspect of it as well. It's really easy to do kind of like a shock. This is not what you did. Some commentators who've just had like a shock reaction, which is, we'll just go to the police then, completely forgetting or disregarding how embarrassing it must be to be the person who's been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed. I mean, having to go, something that horrible happening to you, and then you have to go and talk to a man about it and explain, well, he put his hand on my leg. And they say, well, what's wrong with that? And how do you convey how horrible that was or that feeling? You're just being forced to relive a moment that you now want to forget. Yeah, and I would much rather talk to, if it was me, Rosamund Irwin, than I would talk to Barry and Bolton at the police station. As well, the other thing, I think on your point about open secrets, I think it's about appetite. I think that the last couple of years that there's been such a change in how what we perceive sexual assault or sexual harassment to be, right? There's been such a gigantic shift from that lad culture that was overarching. Pervasive, sorry, yeah. Think about Noel Fielding has been documented to have been kissing Pixie Geldof when she was 16. No one really cared when that story came out, but now this Russell Brand thing's everywhere. People are like, hey, that's really weird. Why would he do that?
Yeah, I think recent high-profile case is probably the Rubiales thing, right? And Jenny Hermoso when he kisses her after they win the World Cup, if they win the World Cup. The conversation and reaction to that, if it happens in 2004, I don't think it's the same.
Oh, no way.
No. Did I say Noel Fielding, right?
You did say Noel Fielding.
I was worried I said someone else then.
Yeah. Do we have anything else we'd like to mention or discuss in relation to this?
I don't think so.
Beverly Turner.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah.
Should we just put the clip in?
Yeah.
Huge story, and I'm astonished that you leapt to his defence
before
you can have
any
read
of his content in the last 3 years. You have no idea who he is now. You have
Dispatches.
no idea what he represents.
Had you watched the Dispatches show when you put that tweet out on Saturday morning?
No, but that doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
There was nothing
you hadn't even seen the Dispatches programme when you put out he is a hero. You hadn't even seen the Dispatches programme.
I feel like this is just, that Limmy meme where it's like, double down.
Yeah.
What? what on earth is going on? It's actually quite interesting. That I'd be interested to see if they're broadcasting again tomorrow together, because I don't think I've seen something where two anchors on air arguing with each other in the way that they're arguing with each other there. I mean, it's actually quite difficult to understand what they're saying. They're speaking over each other so much.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why. How personal can I get?
As personal as you like.
Let's see.
I remember her losing her job and comforting her afterwards, because she was saying it was because she was a woman and because she was a mother, and that's why she felt she lost her job. And also there are tweets to corroborate this that are still live. And now she's out and out just basically shouting that all women are liars. All women who make accusations are liars.
I think
Where did that change?
I think that shows what we were talking about earlier, the power of Russell Brand's anti-MSM brand. The brand. But they have. But if you sign up if you swallow the Kool-Aid of Russell Brand as a messiah and write about everything, you stop engaging with it critically. Like, I think people who buy that entirely, and if you just happen to have a news breakfast show, you aren't going to engage critically about that. You're going to repeat what you believe to be true about these things, and it shows the power of building that anti-mainstream narrative.
There's probably also a bit of cynicism, right? That if your audience is one you've courted because of COVID skepticism, vaccine skepticism, or in some instances outright denialism, you almost feel obliged to go out to bat for someone who took the same stance on those issues as you, knowing that actually your audience, again, we've spoken about the messianic quality to him. It's a cult. He actually does have a cult of personality around him, and if you don't support him, you're going to be judged accordingly by those people, and you'll no longer have, without those loyal followers, you're sort of nothing, right? I mean, it's a gallery of bastards, really. The people who've come out to defend him, Tate, her. I'm pretty sure I saw Lawrence Fox saying something as well.
Musk. Did you say that? Sorry.
No, I didn't say Musk, but yeah, you're right.
It'll be interesting to see what the more conspiratorially minded presenters on GB News tonight say about this.
Oh, I watched. Mark Dolan compared it to veganism.
What?
It's so good.
What was the comparison?
It's actually kind of like an art. Like, how do you do that?
It's actually not a bad idea, Like, major news event breaks, right? Most people turn on BBC News. Most people turn on Sky News. Or you can just fucking tune into GB News and be like, what the hell have they got to say about this?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
They're like in the production suite before, and they're like rolling this dice, and on each one it's got like a different group that you can pin it on. And they like roll it.
Vegans.
And they're like, the XL Bullies are being banned. Who is it now? They roll the dice. They're literally like, sexual assault victims.
Can you run us through the logic? What was his comparison to veganism? How did it work?
Well, he opened with like a list of like, I guess, that kind of culture. It was like Just Stop Oil, vegans, whatever. And now what? You make a YouTube channel, you appeal to 6 million people, and this is what you get. We can put the clip in, because when you listen to it through, it makes you think.
Brexit, veganism, trans rights, race, the interpretation of history, Harry and Meghan versus the royal family, it goes on. Even the allegations surrounding Philip Schofield and the BBC's Hugh Edwards became yet another tribal war. Why would that be? Why is this happening? Well, glued to our smartphones and laptops for an unhealthy number of hours in the day, the ingenious algorithms dreamt up in Silicon Valley funnel us into one identity group or another. They hack our psychology and manipulate us into taking sides.
Makes you think.
Jesus.
Really makes you think that, doesn't it? Yeah, I want to see what Neil Oliver has to say about this.
Yeah, that would be cracking. That would be an unbelievable bit of television.
I don't know if he'll even address it, to be honest with you.
Must do.
They're quite aligned in their sort of like World Economic Forum, Davos, Illuminati shit, aren't they? So
it'd be kind of you have to stand by your allies in that fight, in the good fight against the World Economic Forum.
They've gone off Davos because Keir Starmer said he liked Davos.
Oh, no.
He ruined it for us.
I think Starmer said something like, he was asked, would you rather be in Parliament or at Davos? And he was like,
Davos.
Well, I'd obviously like to be at Davos because there's a lot of good thinking going on here.
Your Starmer impression has gotten worse. I
Well,
hate to say.
do you know what?
That was too close to your Ollie Douglas.
Yeah.
The listeners really liked it the last time.
Oh, they won't like that one.
I was thinking at the weekend about Keir Starmer, as I often do. I think when he goes to McDonald's, he orders a cheeseburger and asks for it plain.
He's a vegetarian.
Is he?
Yeah, so we won't be getting him a cheeseburger.
Yeah, so that was
Hate to
really...
say.
Yeah.
That was a
It
weak
doesn't
joke
work.
because it's not based in truth. Mm-hmm. And all good comedy is
Wait
based
till
in
Mark
fact.
Dolan finds out that he's a vegan or vegetarian.
I think he's just vegetarian.
But wait till Mark Dolan
Oh,
finds out
Mark
about
Dolan's
this.
going to lose it.
Yeah. Davos,
Yeah. What do
vegetarianism.
you get? What's the vegetarian thing at McDonald's?
A McPlant.
Is that tasty?
Yes, it is.
Oh, really?
But before that, I used
Veggie
to get
deluxe.
a mayo chicken, no chicken, and then put like if it was like mozzarella sticks on them, whatever the cheese item that is available,
Ooh.
I'd put that into it.
Right.
That sounds quite good.
It is quite good.
So do you think you could... So
I'm sorry, is
Starmer,
it not as tasty as your pig spleen?
It's
Starmer,
actually
could,
100% British and Irish beef over.
Starmer could just get cheeseburger, hold the burger, and just have the worst sandwich of all time.
Just the sauce on his bare hand. Just
I had people
Eating a
come
pickle.
in and order that before, but the worst thing was when they say no bun.
That's
Because they're gluten free,
mental.
so you have to get out the pancake tray and put all the various items of the burger in the pancake tray and shut it and give it to them. And a knife and fork as well.
That's really weird. If you're going to go to McDonald's
Yes, what's
to
the
eat
fucking
just
point?
like a patty.
You know how the customer's always right. Sometimes they're not. When I worked in a cafe in Edinburgh, I was really hungover, and I had to come in and someone at 7 o'clock in the morning, someone was like, "Oh, can I have an egg mayo sandwich?" I was like, "No, you fucking can't. I'm not having to."
What's wrong with that?
It was disgusting
Why?
because it's egg mayo.
But
That's
you
my
have
main
eggs
objection.
for breakfast then.
Yeah, but I don't.
What, just no mayo?
Chopped up. I don't really like boiled eggs.
So you're upset as the assembly of how
I
of
had
the
to make
eggs?
it.
My
Was
guy,
what I was
you should-
objecting
You
to.
shouldn't have been working in a cafe.
Yeah.
Why?
You didn't like making people sandwiches.
No, I like
That's
making
the
those
job.
No, I didn't like making egg mayo sandwiches. Any other combination, I was happy to provide.
What about if it was egg and cress?
Also gross. It's the time as well. I was hungover.
What about an all-day breakfast? Again, that's your fault.
And the eggs shouldn't smell.
Well, they did.
If the eggs smell, they are bad eggs.
That's what the point that I was making.
How do you feel?
Get
Proudly.
Edwina Curry on this. She'd have a lot to say.
Why?
Edwina Curry, salmonella. How do you not remember this?
Because I was not born.
Oh my God, why aren't you into the law of John Mayer? John Major.
John
John
Mayer.
Mayer.
You're into both.
John Major and Edwina Curry.
Because
John Major, who legalized sodomy. I've got so much to say about Edwina Curry. He actually did. He was like, anal.
for everyone,
All anal.
that's a vote winner.
Where do you stand on an all-day breakfast sandwich?
Pro.
But that has egg in it.
Sorry, it's egg mayonnaise is specifically what I object to when I'm hungover and making it for you. That's my main objection.
A situation we're yet to encounter together, but one we still have time to achieve.
Oh no, I'm not making a fucking sandwich.
What if
I don't
someone
work in a
ordered an
cafe
all-day
anymore.
breakfast sandwich, but they wanted mayo in it?
I think that's wrong. I'd do it, but I think it's gross.
But you would object to egg mayo.
Yeah.
Right.
Ketchup or brown sauce in a bacon sandwich.
Ketchup, I think.
Yeah.
I like brown sauce too, though.
You've got
Fascinating.
two options. You have to stand in a room in a tank with a big tuna, or you have to make 100 egg mayo sandwiches.
On a stinky hangover. You're dusty.
100.
100.
I'd do the 100 sandwiches.
Would you over
Yeah.
the big tuna?
Yeah, I'm not scared
that's
of
like-
the egg mayo.
That's like a phobia, isn't it? There's a scale of escalation.
Yeah, it's way worse.
I like the idea that you're scared of the egg mayo.
I'm not.
It's
I'm
like
not,
in the
I'm
prep
not
tin.
scared of the egg mayo.
I'm scared of the fish. I'm scared of the big scary fish.
I'm just scared of the grim sandwich filling.
Okay, let's test the limits of this then. Olympic pool. Small fish.
Right.
Let's say a sardine.
Right, okay.
100 egg mayo sandwiches.
What am I doing in the pool? Just getting in it.
Yeah, just go for a swim.
I can do that.
But
you do that over the
no, but it's a
sandwiches.
dark pool, so you don't know where the sardine is.
It's like the sea, though. That's fine. The sea's dark.
Okay, so we know that his inflection point is somewhere between pool and tank.
Mm-hmm.
Paddling pool.
With a sardine still.
Yeah.
I've actually never seen another live sardine, so I don't know how freaky it is.
We can arrange that.
I find out then. You're going to show me photos of the fish again.
I'm going to show you a video of a sardine, yeah.
I'm going to say...
The billion sardine dance. Here we go.
It's actually might cause me to have a panic attack.
That's a turtle. There they are.
That's fucking just awful.
Oh no. I'll turn the audio down to make it easier for the edit. You want to see as well, Ava?
Yeah, I'd like to see the sardines. Oh my god, Ed.
Those
There's just one, though.
Those are bubbles.
They're fish, aren't they? Not?
There they are.
I think I could...
That's not a sardine. These aren't sardines. That's a ray. That's a whale. What's happening here? There they are. Those are sardines.
I think I would just do...
You and one of those pretty shiny boys
I think I would just do sandwich.
You do the sandwich
I
over
do
a
the
little
sandwiches.
sardine.
in a paddling pool.
Yeah, that's too close proximity.
Okay. So it's about distance.
Yeah. As far away from me as possible is ideally the distance between me and any fish.
Okay, you have to. Okay, a paddling pool with a sardine in it, or 100 hours of Jim will fix it.
Watching it.
Yeah. And you have to eat egg sandwiches.
So it's a paddling pool and a sardine, or watching 100 hours, which are 100 episodes.
I don't know.
How long was Jim will fix it?
I don't know.
You were alive then.
No, I wasn't.
Suspect. Your knowledge of John Major and Edwina Curry is far more in depth than your knowledge of Jim will fix it. Suspicious.
Very suspicious.
I think that they're my favourite celebrity couple.
Let's talk about Keir Starmer. Let's move things along. He's seeking a major rewrite of the Brexit deal and a closer relationship with Europe. He told the FT that he would put a closer trading relationship with Brussels and a new partnership with business at the heart of his efforts to bolster Britain's economic growth. Ava, what do you think of that?
So it's the trade deal that Boris Johnson signed us up for, and it expires in 2025. It's up for renegotiation.
I thought Brexit was done.
Well, it wasn't quite. It's sort of like when you make a dish, Ollie. It can be oven ready for quite some time. Once you've cooked it, it does actually cool down.
And go off.
And go off.
Does go off sometimes.
But sometimes you've got the opportunity to reheat it, or you have to start and make a new egg sandwich. And in this case, Keir Starmer is saying, egg and cress, 2025, it's going to be new. Closer ties to the EU. The alternative is sardines.
Take the egg and cress over that.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's up for, yeah. But he's sort of been moving towards this very obvious realignment with certain pacts or trade alliances that we have with the EU. For example, the Horizon Agreement that we just re-signed, he was a big proponent of that. That's the science agreement. Multiple billions that's cost us to re-enter. He also was talking last week about closer ties with France over dealing with channel crossings. And the policy that he proposed would involve us going back into Europol, which of course we left after Brexit. That would be a closer tie to Europe.
I've got to be honest. When I was clamouring for more of a policy programme from his government and what they're going to look to do, and all of the talk about how hard it's going to be for a Labour government to come to fruition because the polls will narrow and the media will be against you and yada, yada, yada. I didn't think he would come out with possibly the two most provocative and dangerous issues for him politically, that are immigration and a relationship with the EU.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a misstep. I don't know.
Can I make an argument?
Yeah, I'd love you to.
That I actually think it was a mistake rather than a misstep. So do you know the way... Can I tell you how the story played out for the Channel Crossing story last week?
Give us a timeline.
So the story comes out in The Sun. The Telegraph and the Mail had obviously got wind of it. They went to the Conservatives for comments. And that's why The Sun's headline was tougher laws on channel crossings. We're going to make all, I forgot the name, smugglers, terrorists. Then the story in the Telegraph was about how he'd have to let in potentially thousands of asylum seekers, because the government know that if you're going to restrict the channel crossings, you actually do have a legal obligation with Europe, if you tie yourselves to them, to let those people in. I just thought that timeline was so funny because Labour just did not anticipate the Conservatives not having already have thought about this and decided what the downsides are. Do you know what I mean? Like they had the paper ready to go. They had the cut-off ready to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I think it's a mistake. I don't think he did not intend to let in potentially hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers. In the same way, I don't think he intended to say, we are going to look at the single market.
Is this another case of Keir Starmer can't do anything right? In terms of, these are two things that you've called for a closer realignment with the EU on this podcast. And he's promoting closer cooperation with the EU, which I think is a good thing. A large proportion of the country will think is a good thing. It's only a mistake if you're only thinking of the way in which the Conservatives will frame it. And probably the same with asylum seekers as well.
It's a bit nuts to renegotiate that trade agreement if it's going to cost us a whole load of money, and do the Europol agreement and do the Horizon agreement. If you're basically going to go and do all of the cogs, but you're not going to be involved with the actual
decision making.
Yeah, it does seem a bit nuts.
My opposition. I'm sorry. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it.
No. I know you're not.
I think someone has to grasp the nettle. I just think maybe it's slightly politically insane to do it before an election. But that's a matter of decision making. What I mean to say is, actually, famously, a majority of people aren't in favour of a close relationship with the EU. So it's a politically, a potentially electorally dangerous thing for him to do, even though it might be the right one. But I guess that's leadership for you, right?
Waiting until you got into office and then just doing it anyway would be safer, because
that's kind of his MO as well, right?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think of the polling. I think the last one did say that they would expect Keir to forge closer ties with the EU if he was to become Prime Minister. So why not just play off the assumption and get in, rather than potentially have this catastrophe before you can get in and do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't know. I don't think it is a mistake. I think if you're going to do something as potentially radical as closer alignment with the EU, you should pave the way for the electorate.
Yeah,
because it might not be popular now, but it might be more popular if you're making the case consistently up to the general election. Because I don't know. I think the British public can change their mind from 2016.
I think quite a few of them have.
Yeah,
and you want to give Scotland the euro, so
well, I should. I think we all do. That's an editorial position.
Just them.
See what
they already have those silly little banknotes. Let's make them take the euro instead.
But we should make
silly little banknotes.
We should make one random town on the red wall take the euro.
Nothing pisses me off more than when you go to Northern Ireland and you come back with a Bank of Ulster note, or you go to Scotland and you come back with an RBS note, and some uppity fucker in a shop is like, "That's not legal tender, my man. It is, and you have to accept it."
Choir.
Oh yeah, cashless society. Here we go. Have you seen the guy on TikTok who goes around with his £100 coin and tries to pay with it?
That's really funny.
It actually is. He goes around, he's got this £100 coin, and then there's
Is it legal tender?
I have learnt it is legal tender.
You must accept this.
And he goes, this is actually his voice. He's like,
it's going to sound like me and Chris Starmer.
He's like, well, I've offered you legal tender and you've refused it. I have held up my side of the contract and you have not filled yours. So I am going to leave now legally without paying. And this is what he does
stuff?
Up and down the country.
Like with the goods?
He'll go and get petrol and then try and pay with a £100 coin or whatever. So he's not holding the petrol. The petrol is, I'm assuming, is in his car at that point.
Can you explain to me how a coin, A, is worth £100 and B, how it's legal tender? Because I've never heard of it.
It's a collector's item.
from the Bank of England.
Yeah.
But it actually...
So it is legal
Yeah,
tender.
they had like a £5 coin. They've commissioned them at various points.
But are they not just like for nonsense royal things to mark occasions? You can't actually use them to pay for anything.
You can use them to pay for things. I used to get £5 coins. My granddad used to give me a lot of £5 coins. There's a really funny backstory to that. Apparently.
We can fill in the gaps for that conversation.
Ed, talk to me about American XL Bullies.
They are trying to take away my dog Fluffy that's only mauled one child this year. And I will not have it. Yeah.
That's outrageous, isn't it?
What, they're trying to take away my Fluffy?
Yeah.
Oh, furious.
The dog's scared of fish.
No, I'm scared of fish. That's why I need the
My dog loves fish. He defends me from the fish.
Who would win, a tuna or an XL Bully?
Entirely super fundamental. This is where does the fight take place?
The sea.
Tuna. 100%.
Land?
The tuna.
No, I don't know, because what if it's on the beach? What if it's like there's enough water for the tuna to survive and flap about, but it's shallow enough that the bully can still move itself?
That'd be actually quite a decent
That would
fight.
have to be the arena, yeah.
We should look into that.
Have you seen The Other Guys, the film?
Yes, that was just that conversation. Have you seen it, Eva?
No.
They have like this whole debate. It's Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, and they're having an argument. And one of the insults is, if you were a lion and I was a tuna, I'd construct an improvised series of breathing apparatus, come and find you and kill you. It's a good film.
This is
This
is a real clear illustration of like men quoting films at each other, and the smile on our faces.
Who is a male teenager in 2010?
The smile on our faces discussing that, and Ava just looking at us both, being like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" It's a gap.
XL owners are angry. Believe it or not.
Just like their dogs.
Just like the dogs. One Facebook group that I'm in for XL owners, the header of the Facebook group is an image of Rishi Sunak, and it just says "cunt" on it. So that part of the Conservative coalition is falling apart. XL owners.
I told you about my that girl I know who's come out in like real support of XL bullies, but she's like a fake celiac, and so she's not scared enough to have an XL bully, but scared enough to avoid all gluten.
I think
separate point.
Mm-hmm.
This is from the rawmint.com. In practice, this means that although the silver UK coins we produce in denominations of £5, £20, £50 and £100 are approved as legal tender, they have been designed as limited edition collectibles or gifts and will not be entering general circulation. As such, UK shops and banks are unlikely to accept them.
So basically, you can use this, but if you could just please not be such a huge, massive dork, and could you just enjoy your coin at home?
Enjoy your coin. Yeah.
What does that involve?
Surely you have to pay postage and packaging on that as well.
Yeah.
So if you'd actually probably be buying a £100 coin, but for £103.99. So if you go to spend it, you're losing your £3.99, aren't you?
Mad. Ed, there's an XL Bully Dangerous Dogs protest.
Not just one. There's two.
And I bet you're looking forward to encountering some XL Bullies at those protests.
Well, believe it or not, the XL Bully owners' protests on Saturday and Sunday, there's actually various ones around the country, but they're being advised to not bring the dogs. Because I think your argument about these dogs being fine completely goes out the window if that dog attacks someone at your "this dog is fine" protest. It'd be interesting, because I think it's you see these people's TikToks and like emotional pleas about how much they love their dog, and you do like empathize with their dog, but and I think a lot of people who are campaigning they are the responsible owners. They are the ones who have incredibly well-trained dogs who keep their dogs on long leashes when they're out for a walk. They exercise them safely. But the problem is there's a proliferation of people who are not taking those precautions. It's really easy to get a XL Bully puppy, and from people from unlicensed breeders, and that's the danger. If you're like a 17-year-old, say you're a 17-year-old single mother with a 60-kilogram dog with more muscle density than like any bodybuilder, whatever. And you can't train it properly because you actually don't have the physical strength or the time or the inclination.
I think you're wrong on the single mother thing. Bad example. Single mother would have that thing running like the Navy.
I'm sorry, more in size discrepancy, I suppose.
Yeah.
But maybe the dog's sexist. It won't listen.
Yeah.
Have you considered that?
Have you seen that? Like, there was this video going around of this guy who was like really scrawny. Maybe he was like probably like 5'6", but like really scrawny, and he had this like XL bully, and he was like trying to show the camera. He was like, he's lovely, and he was like being pulled like by the lead like that.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? And also, I think those people who are like emotionally playing. I don't think anyone's suggesting that there's going to be like a cull.
Emily Thornberry will be.
I don't think anyone's suggesting that they're going to get rounded up and put down. The only way you can possibly implement this is you ban the sale and purchase and breeding of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they die out.
Yeah.
It doesn't sell quite
of
as
natural
well.
causes.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe they are talking about putting them all down.
I think they're exploring the options at the moment. I think they are. I think
sounds like a Bond villain.
I think we'll explore the options.
Consider all the options.
We know you love your dog, Mr. Bond.
If the dog survives an attack from a massive tuna, it gets put down.
I suggest.
And if it dies during that attack with massive tuna, problem solved already.
Why don't we just put them down by dropping them in the middle of the sea?
Oh my God, that's so dark. Because then the great
You're
whites
gonna
get a
get done
taste
now.
for.
What's her name? Britain First are going to be all over you.
Is she pro-dog?
What's her name? Jacinda or something?
Jada
Jada.
Franson.
Jada Franson.
Is she pro-dog?
Jacinda.
That's why that was their whole
yeah, of course
their
they
Facebook
are.
strategy was like they shared like really racist memes along with like if you like puppies. That's how they grew their Facebook pages.
Right.
The Venn diagram of protect dogs and no more migrants is a complete circle.
I don't think that's true.
Didn't someone call it dog racism over the weekend?
It was I think someone did. Munya Chihuahua did a sketch about it as well, which is very good.
Nice.
What was I going to say?
Where do you stand on it? Ban them.
I think ban them. I think
What about an Alsatian? Ban that?
Alsatians aren't killing children at the rate of XL bullies. I think that's.
They are dangerous dogs, though.
No, they are. But I think this is the. It's not as simple as that. It's like statistically, this has become an issue in the past few years, and these dogs are responsible for a disproportionate amount of attacks by dogs, and that does need to be addressed.
What about a license?
A license, I'd back a license, but
That's where I am.
but I think they go hand in hand. I think you need
a ban and then license.
because it's also it's about responsible ownership, and you can't like you wouldn't want people taking like a wolf into their home without.
I would.
Well, yes, but it'd kill you. Like you'd be thick to do that.
Yeah, but he can do what he wants in his own home.
But as in, I think the problem is like
Me and
responsible
that wolf
training.
are spending 9 months like in
Locked in
intense
combat.
Yeah, personal conflict
Until you become the alpha.
and then we leave the flat. One of us is the alpha. We don't know which one. It's too early to say, but bonded for life.
That's an interesting approach to dog training, but
And we can license that process.
but
I don't think ban.
what do you think?
I think that you should have to go to regulated training with it. And if that regulated trainer decides that dog is not safe to be off lead or in the public, like it can determine, that then the dog has to be culled.
Have you ever been bitten by a dog?
No. Have you?
Yes.
Have you?
Really?
A miniature dachshund.
Did it hurt?
Yeah, it did hurt. It did hurt.
I bet.
Because it kept going. Didn't stop. Wasn't
Oh,
one and
no.
done. Wasn't one and done.
I thought you were
Got some pathetic scars.
I thought you were a badger.
From it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was recently. I remember
I
that.
feel like I remember you coming back and complaining about being...
Bitten by a miniature dachshund.
Yeah. I think you started off by saying, my wolf and I were in the middle of...
We were locked in a
We
spiritual
know who's
operation.
leaving. We know who's leaving that 9-month trial by combat as the beta. It's me
Yeah,
because I got done by a
As the
miniature
wolf.
dachshund.
Oh, yeah.
The miniature dachshund came out on top. So, quick word on Liz Truss. She's still at it.
She's back.
The bitch is back.
Politics is good again, baby.
She just won't fucking quit.
She's explaining to everyone at the Institute for Government this morning that we have low productivity and low growth, and we can't encourage people to make millions here because tax is too high. Now, I was in favour of one thing she said, which was she was outraged at the graduate tax, which I first missed. And then I heard her say that it was outrageous that people had to pay the graduate tax. And I was like, do you know what, Liz? All right.
You get it.
You get it.
Talk to me.
I think she's got... What she's arguing is that, yes, that people aren't going to want to be encouraged to come here, to put their money here, because the taxes are so high. But she's completely ignoring the fact that if you are of a certain class or wealth, you don't pay those taxes. That money is not here. That money is on the Cayman. So we're talking about ordinary people who work in the public sector who earn maybe 50 grand, and yeah, it's a bit shit that they're getting paid. They're paying 40% tax, right?
Yeah, I think her continued political career is quite embarrassing. I think if you've been embarrassed out of office, that's it for you.
The Prime Minister's spokesman was asked, did Rishi Sunak watch Liz Truss's speech? And the spokesman said, no, Rishi Sunak was busy actually being the Prime Minister.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
Good response.
If your rival has been laughed out of office.
Yeah, I don't know if she could even have I feel like Theresa May has kind of got it in doing like a semi-dignified backbencher thing.
She was Prime Minister for so much longer.
Try and whitewash your career with like a book. Move on.
Yeah.
Laundered her reputation.
I don't know if that's been particularly successful, but she's tried to.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson, just leave in disgrace. Off you go. David Cameron, leave in disgrace. Liz Truss is kind of... I think
undignified.
It's undignified because it's the delusions of grandeur.
Yeah. I was right. I was right.
Yeah.
In the same way that she just clearly was so incapable of doing the job and was so out of her depth. In the same way, she's now like touring. Did she go to China? Did she go to China and deliver a speech of some description?
Maybe.
What are you talking about? You're not talking about pork markets in Beijing.
No.
She's been back. I don't know.
But I don't know. She's trying to still. It's so cringe because she's trying to be an influential voice in politics, despite being so lacking in self-awareness that she cannot see that she's totally discredited.
Yeah, but she does speak for a
silent majority.
No, a proportion of Conservative backbenchers, because that's what they're doing at the moment. They're going to Sunak and they're saying, like, you need to offer tax cuts, you need to offer tax incentives, I need to go back to the constituency or I'm going to lose it unless you offer these. And they're all bolstering her behind the scenes and telling her, like, you are the best thing ever, because they don't want to actually have to put their name to it because it's so embarrassing to have to do it.
Can you imagine if she fucking came back and led the Tory party again?
Insane.
I'd love that.
Britain would fall.
Yeah.
Would
Probably in opposition, I think. I think they lose the next election.
They trust in opposition.
They fully lose their minds. It's inevitable. They're going to have this battle for the ideological soul, etc., upon which the most mental right-wing person will win. So either Suella or Liz, whoever's the last woman standing.
I think if it's Liz, that's the end of the Conservative Party.
I've actually got some great predictions for this, some rogue ones, but I think we should do a whole other episode on it.
All right.
Predictions.
Yeah.
Will we save it for then?
We'll save it for them.
Okay, fantastic. Ed Campbell, Ava Santina, a pleasure to speak to both of you. Ava, how can people get tickets to come and see you do a live version of the Pubcast with Mick Lynch in Liverpool next month?
You can go and buy tickets right now on The World Transformed. The World Transformed. I'm going to say it again because no one could understand Ed the last time.
It's quite racist, actually.
The World Transformed. 8th of October, 5:30.
Ed, how fire are the memes on the PolJOE subreddit?
So fire. You can go out to r/PoliticsJOE and make more fire memes. We're in the top 20% of subreddits of all time in terms of numbers, which I think is quite mental. Do you want to be part of that 20% of people with great taste on Reddit?
Welcome to the elite.
Absolutely.
And no more comments on the YouTube like about me swallowing or not. What the fuck was that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, stop that.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah, it was grim.
Did we block those people?
Can't remember. You pointed it
I
out.
think I did.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
None of that nonsense.
You're not allowed to listen to this podcast anymore, mate.
Yeah.
See you on the next one.